All right, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. I'm Kyle, AA0Z, and welcome to the new CW Operators Roundtable. We do this every other Monday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And this week, we are going to talk about adjusting your key. Last week, we talked about what favorite keys we had as a group and why we landed on those keys. This week, we're going to talk about how to adjust your favorite keys. And we've got our panel of experts and our mentors and our new CW operators. Let's go around the room and meet everyone. Vince, hello, how are you? What's going on?
Hello, Kyle. I'm Vince. I am your new CW operator. And one day I'll get better at it.
I saw that you did some activating this week.
I did 48 contacts yesterday on 5 bands. It was a slow day. And I did, I don't know, probably 25 in 45 minutes the day before on Saturday when conditions were great. I have a long way to go to get caught up to my self-stated goal of 200 activating contacts a month. So I got to get crack-a-lacking.
Yeah. So that's a self-stated goal that...
It's a self-stated goal that might have had something to do with New Year's Eve and a beer in my hands and a little bit of peer pressure to set a goal.
Gotcha.
Not saying that's the case, of course, but...
Very good. Well, thanks for being here, Vince. TJ, K9JK, new edition. Hello, how are you?
How's it going? K9JK is actually a guy that I know does a lot of VHF stuff, so I'm K9KJ.
KJ.
And that's okay.
Did I say JK?
Yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah, see, that's my dyslexia coming through. K9KJ. Yes.
You know, I get some folks at work call me JT sometimes, too.
Sorry about that.
I answer to everything. It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I go by TJ. I've got a long list of Thomas Johnsons in my family, including my grandfather, father, and yes, my brother's name is Tom Johnson. So it's kind of weird, right? So I'm Tom Jr., TJ. I've been doing CW for the better part of about 30 years. Got licensed in 92. And really, I for no other reason as I just haven't really been a sideband person. I just got a microphone about 2 months ago, and I played with the sideband contest this past weekend. So that was kind of wild and weird, but I kind of have an affinity for really unique and interesting Iambic CW keys. So I've got a little collection going.
And you have, I'm putting your YouTube in the chat here. You have a relatively new YouTube channel, and it's all about CW and your journey, working contests. You talk about SST and middle speed or mid speed?
Yeah, it's like the MST, I think they call it. So yeah, it's I think around like 20 words a minute, something like that. So I think they're trying to scale things so that people can kind of maybe graduate into the CWT eventually.
Yeah, so everyone go and subscribe to TJ's YouTube. It's very good. If you want to learn some more stuff about CW, go to sub to his channel.
Thank you.
Tim, K7KOM, how are you?
N7KOM. Oh yeah,
N7.
I see my name switch back.
I'm gonna get out of here, guys. You guys are gonna run the stream, and I've been on the road all day. I got back from Chattanooga and spent 7 hours on the road. So you guys just take the stream, and I'm just gonna go. So
you're forgiven. You're not the first person to log it that way.
N7KOM.
We're gonna change call signs by the time it's over.
Yeah, let's all musical chairs, right?
Oh my gosh! All right, go, Tim.
Yeah. What was the question?
I don't know. What have you been doing?
I'm Tim N7KOM. I mostly do soda activations. I've just gotten into chasing soda now. I'm starting to set up a home QTH station, slowly but surely. And I did my first POTA activation yesterday because I have a hurt foot, and Chris W7MTV took me out to Smith Rock State Park, and we activated it for POTA.
Wow, nice. Very good. What was the POTA designator? Do you remember?
Oh gosh,
All right, Charlie.
K2853. K2853.
Very good. How many contacts, Tim?
Okay, 17 contacts. We kind of dinked around for about the first 45 minutes, chasing soda activators from the park, and we were kind of switching off using the same rig and trading back and forth. So it was fun to use someone else's key and see how they have it dialed in.
Yeah, good point. Charlie, what is it snowy in Arizona?
A lot of Arizona is snowy. Of course, in the Phoenix area, it's not, and that's why I was out doing soda in the desert peaks instead of up in Flagstaff or wherever else I usually go at this time of year to get the 10-pointers. It was a couple 2-pointers last Saturday. Some hard going on a 2-pointers too, but it was fun. Got some good DX and did a review on another tuner. Which that video will be coming out this week, I think. And just check out my channel. I mean, I do interviews, and I do POTA and soda, and do some key reviews as well. CW keys, it's all just kind of portable ops stuff. So if you like that kind of thing, check it out.
Yeah, Charlie does a good review session of all the keys that he gets. Really neat. Thank you, Charlie.
You bet.
Joe, K9UR. What's going on? What's you got quite a bit coming up, I think, don't you?
Yeah, busy time. Getting ready for 9G4 X-ray, Ghana, West Africa, leaving on the 21st of March, and we'll be over there till the 31st of March, and I'll be one of the 3 CW operators for that D-expedition. Ghana's not the rarest of countries, but it's Africa, and Africa is really cool. And if you've never studied high life music, the music from Ghana, West Africa is really unique, really cool stuff. So looking forward to doing that, then come back for a couple weeks and then over to Croatia. I teach over there, and we'll be in Zagreb and probably do some 9 Alpha 5 portable activities, maybe do some POTA stuff. I'm not quite sure what gear I'm going to bring, but I'll probably activate something over there in Croatia. So I'm looking forward to it. So on the road with ham radio, it's fun stuff.
Very good. You're taking one of my CW ops for Missouri QSO party to Ghana with you.
Yeah. Mike, WB0SND is joining. So, well, it's been our bucket list. We're buddies from back in high school days. So 35 years. And we always said we wanted to do a D-expedition. So we were down in Puerto Vallarta last week. He happened to be down there. I was down there together. And so we concocted a plan, and here we go. So
yeah,
it's going to be great.
He emailed me. It's like, I can't do Missouri QSO party. I'm going to be in Ghana. I'm be like, oh, you dog.
Yeah, very cool. Well, it's great. Really appreciate the shout out to all the sponsors and the folks who help make these things possible. It's on our own dime, but folks like DX Engineering came up with some coax cable and things like that, which is very appreciated. 6-meter beam, things like that. Small things. Doesn't have to be big things. Doesn't have to be $750,000.
Yeah,
or a sailboat rental. It can be something simple, and we'll have a good time with it.
Very good. Very good. All right. Somebody in the chat had, can you put everyone's YouTube channel? And if you guys want to put your YouTube channel in the chat, I will approve it. But yeah, all these characters here have YouTube channels. Go subscribe to Vince, TJ, Tim, Charlie, and Joe doesn't have one. Joe, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I do. I do a bit of YouTube, but I haven't really monetized it exactly. But I'd love it if folks join. I do low cost antennas, inexpensive ham radio equipment. Helping new folks get on the air. That's really my mission. I work with school clubs and things like that, university clubs. So my videos are really tailored towards those kinds of activities, helping new hams get on the air and get, inexpensive equipment to get them going. So that's really what I'm all about.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So today we're going to talk about adjusting your CW key. So last week we talked about what key everyone landed on and why. Had a good discussion. But I brought especially TJ and Joe and Charlie on to talk about adjusting. We're going to start with the Iambic paddle first, and we're going to talk about ways that you can adjust this to get you started. We had talked about last week people who were heavy-fisted and people who just barely touch the key paddles and they move and they produce the dits and das. I have got a myriad of Iambic paddles that I just hit the mic, that I have purchased and acquired over the years, but to tell you the truth, no one has really sat down with me and said, let's take a look at your keying style and let's adjust this paddle for the way that you like it. And maybe there is no wrong or right way. Maybe it's all by what you think you like. But there are 4 dials on this bencher or this Bengali traveler here, and I can probably figure out what the back 2 do because they're the ones that have the spacing, but the other 2 in front, I'm not really sure what they do, to tell you the truth. So I guess maybe I'm going to look at Joe and Charlie and TJ kind of to take the reins here on what did you guys do starting out and what was your progression on how you adjusted your keys, and then maybe we can start the discussion there on how to maybe adjust something like this tonight on the air and see if we can get it dialed in.
Cool. So maybe I just start out and say I started out with sort of the traditional bencher or vibroplex paddle, which is a very common popular paddle in the 70s and 80s when I was coming into ham radio. They're still popular today. What I learned is that those paddles are are spring loaded. They're spring mechanisms. There's actually a spring. You can see, this is a straight key here, but you can see in the middle part of the straight key. Actually, I turned my virtual screen off here in a minute, but you can see there's a spring, and that spring puts tension on the pieces of the paddle. And the challenge with that is springs change their tension as temperature changes. So you could set up a paddle in your ham shack and it's hot because it's summertime, and you go back a week later and you've got the air conditioning running now and the ham shack is nice and cool, and the paddle seems like it's out of adjustment. You say, well, what the heck? I had this dialed in last week. What happened? Did my kid mess with the paddle? No, they didn't. What happens is the metal action of the spring will change over time. It's temperature sensitive. And so the solution was a relatively recent invention. I'd say over the last 20 years, we've gotten magnetic tensioned paddles. We've got these high powered magnets now created that you can buy, and you can go get them at Hobby Lobby, and they've got warnings on the package, make sure you keep out of reach of kids and all this other. Anyway, they're very high strength magnets, and what that does is that puts a tension on the paddle arms and allows you to tension or adjust the paddle based on the magnetic pull rather than a spring. So there's a pull push mechanism, okay, and that is the amount of force you have to apply with your thumb or your index finger on each of the 2 paddles. There's also spacing, and that spacing is how far that mechanism has to travel. Some people like very, very tight spacing. Some people like very wide spacing. The wider the spacing, the slower you're going to send. So as you speed up, you want to decrease the amount of travel because you don't want to have to travel far. You want to be able to, send very quickly. The problem with tight spacing is if you're not practiced, you're prone to making errors. And so usually what happens, and I guess other guys can jump in here, usually what happens is folks will start out with a wider spacing between the 2 contact points. And as they speed up, as they get better, as their hand gets less jittery, as they relax and get comfortable sending, they can narrow that spacing so the paddle doesn't have to travel as far. And of course, once that happens, then your speed will increase. We can talk later about Iambic versus Cootie versus single lever paddles. That's important too. But let's just kind of start out with some different paddle kind of designs. Let me just do something here real quickly. I'm going to turn off this virtual background because I think sometimes it will cause problems. There we go. And let me just share with you the paddle. This is one of the Bengali paddles. This one is called the Expedition. What I like about it is it weighs about 6 pounds. Why does that matter? Well, because paddles will creep across your table. There's some tricks to stopping paddle creep. There's two that I like. One is a big ass piece of steel. Okay, and you can actually mount the paddle to this or a straight key to this. The other one is very simple. It is an Amazon, you can buy them off of Amazon, piece of Teflon, I think they call it.
It's rubber.
Silicon.
It's anti-slip rubber.
Yeah,
and I just
rubber,
bought
but
some.
They use this for baking. They use this in baking, actually.
Oh yeah, that
so
stuff
the bread doesn't stick to the countertop or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just buy those and I cut those up into little squares. And then what happens is the little piece of plastic and the paddle sits on the little piece of plastic, and then it can't slide around. Nothing makes sloppier sending than when a paddle is sliding around your tabletop. So that's, I guess, lesson number one. Before you deal with any kind of setup, make sure your paddle's not slipping around. Heavy paddle and anchor it to the table. All right, now I'm going to shut up and let the other guys talk.
Yeah, I've also so whenever I bought my I have many N0 SA paddles. I just 3D printed this holder, right, to hold it. But it's got some dual lock, some 3M dual lock, and I went and got what's called a jeweler's base. And the jeweler's base, I put the dual lock on the jeweler's base, and the jeweler's base is what holds this paddle down to with some it's a cabinet liner, I think what it's called, and I use that. But yeah, your comment about spacing is good, because I just realized the spacing on this guy is like huge, and I make I make more mistakes with this paddle because I think what I'm doing is I'm keying and I'm spacing out. I'm going faster than what the spacing of the paddle is allowing me to go, and I'm making mistakes. And I think that I need to bring the spacing in on this paddle. But yeah, good point. TJ, what do you think about this?
I think it's a great point. I think the spacing is something that it's probably one of the first things that I would really kind of mess with. And I started out with a bencher also. This is one of my benchers that I've got, and I actually still had my very first bencher that I bought in 1992, maybe something like that. I found it at a Hamfest. Some guy was selling it. I'm like, oh wow, those things go for a lot of money, and it was like probably half the price. So I got introduced to being a cheap ass for the rest of my life and going ham radio. So, but yeah, I like super tight spacing. As a matter of fact, Joe could probably attest to this. When you get a Bengali, they give you a piece of like foil, or at least some of the newer ones do. I don't know, Joe, maybe you've had yours for a while and they just started doing this, but yeah, they've got a little piece of foil that you can put in between the contacts to adjust the spacing to, and you just kind of tighten up the contact against the foil, so it just kind of just has a little bit of grab. You don't want to like slam it on there so you could barely take it out, but just has a little bit of grab, and then you just kind of pull it out, and that's the right spacing. Of course, before, I mean, when I was like 18 years old, I didn't even know what Bengali was, right? So what my Elmer told me to do was take a sheet of paper and put it in between the contacts and use that as your spacing.
Okay.
And that was kind of like the old school first way I've done it, at least with my couple of benchers that I started out with. And as I started getting faster in speed and kind of approaching like the 30 word a minute mark, it was kind of one of those things. I would use the paper for spacing, and then I'd take this paper out and just do just a little baby tweak, a little bit more. And, sometimes doing that method is effective and sometimes not. Sometimes I'll be sending, it'll be so darn close that all of a sudden one of the contacts will just be sticking.
Right.
So,
yeah.
That's you got to find that sweet spot for the spacing, or else that'll happen. Conversely, I do a lot of mobile operation. So I'll do CLB in my car, And if your spacing is super tight, the littlest bump that you go over is going to key the key. So I'll be sending, and all of a sudden there's a string of dits and a das right in the middle of what I'm sending, because I'm kind of going over some train tracks or something. So I'll widen out the spacing on my CW keys in the car.
I've noticed that heavy keyers, people who bang the keys around, if they've got, does this happen to you, TJ? If you're a heavy keyer and you've got super tight spacing, that if you have a key that is not well made, that you're hitting the dit so hard that it's keying the DAWs at the same time also?
Yeah, and that can also come into play with like some of the magnetic ones, the magnetic return. If you don't set those magnets to a strong enough strength, yeah, I mean, just the inertia and force of you going back and forth will slam the other one because it doesn't have enough magnetic strength to keep going. And you can kind of demonstrate that yourself if you bring the magnets out, for example, on this Bengali. So that's what we've got the contact adjustment on the top, so you can see where where's my pencil? Unprepared. So where the contacts make contact, these thumb screws, and then these guys right here bring the magnets in and out. So if you kind of screw these out pretty far, you can actually kind of play with that. And if you screw them in too far, the magnets are going to be so strong that sometimes if you're really clipping along, some of the dits won't go, or the die will kind of get a little flaky. So I want to try to find a sweet spot, and I wish there was like a perfect answer for that, but it's just kind of a trial and error thing.
Yeah.
One other item that's really important, as you adjust the spacing, the whole idea is you're moving a piece of metal closer to a contact point. And the closer you are, the less distance you have to travel. But you also have to remember that contact point is very important. Some paddles are gold plated, some are silver plated. Don't file them down, because that will damage the burrs on the contacts. And that's actually a very sensitive part of the paddle, is that contact surface. So it's not just the spacing and the weight. Also make sure, the reason they use that paper is also to clean contacts, just like you'd clean a set of relay contacts. And some are better than others. The Bengalis tend to be gold plated, but others are silver or worse, like a piece of screw. If you go buy those 3D printed paddles online, or the $49 Chinesium paddles, a lot of times they work mechanically, but the contacts are not proper. And so what happens is you'll get a little oxidation on the contact point, and then you're like, well, I'm sending, but it's not really sending the way I hear it click, but it's not actually actuating. And that's because the contacts aren't good. There's high resistance.
Yeah, I think even on these benchers, the contact points on both sides they're either brass or silver, and they just tarnish over time. So if you haven't used it in a while, you're going to get some pretty flaky response to it.
Yeah, in the old days, they had high voltage, so that would kind of clear the contacts. But nowadays, we don't have that luxury. So we have to do it with a dollar bill or a piece of paper. Don't file them.
So let me just interject too, because I think that most everything you got, everybody's kind of the two, well, TJ and Joe have mostly been the two talking. They've pretty much covered everything as far as I can tell that's important. I just maybe add a few things. I would say that the tight spacing isn't necessarily the best in every circumstance, and I think that's what TJ was pointing out, and I totally agree with that. It really depends on your operating environment, as TJ said, because so if you're driving down the road, like you said, you have to have the spacing a little bit further out. And for what I do in Summits on the Air, I can't have that tight spacing either, especially since I'm holding a paddle. It's just a different environment, and even if you're on the radio, you can't have it quite as tight. It's just there's just things about it that just don't make it right. But definitely, I would agree. If you're in your ham shack and you've got the large ass piece of steel, then you can definitely bring those contacts in close. I also agree that it is basically just what you like and how it feels to you. I don't think there's a wrong and a right way. It's totally just what feels good for you. And as far as the spring tension goes, I would just mention that there are some paddles out there that you cannot adjust the spring tension at all. And so you got to make sure you are aware of that and you look at that if it's important for you to, you may have to be just by default accept the tension that the paddle's built with. So make sure if you're purchasing one or you look into that. I had an interviewer, I had somebody on my channel actually just yesterday who's very proficient in Morse code, and he pointed out something that I had forgotten that I've tried before. When you're working with the tension, and he said make sure that when you are starting your adjustments that you use some coins or some sort of weights and take the paddle and tip it on its side and just start stacking the coins and get to the point where it just barely starts to make contact, and use that as a base measurement so that you know kind of where you're starting at. Because in the you could make an adjustment and then you're like, well, I don't even know where I'm at. I need to. So you add a coin and you subtract a coin, and it gives you kind of a from that base where you're going to be going as far as the tension goes. And the last thing that he mentioned that I didn't even think about is you need to be aware of the fulcrum point of the lever when it comes to your contact and tension, because if you have a paddle and like this right here is the end that you touch with your finger. If the fulcrum point's here and it tilts like that, it's going to be way different than if the fulcrum point's way over here. And there's more distance and there's different mechanics, and so not all keys are the same, and you really need to approach them differently depending on how they're built. So that's my 2 cents.
That's a good point.
That weight that's loading the coins on its side, I never thought about that, and getting the weight the same on each side of the paddle. That's a good tip.
I would be remiss at this point in time if I didn't point out that Charlie's tip about stacking coins on the key turned sideways was his 2 cents worth. Those were his words. All right.
This stream has gone to dad jokes.
There we go.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, Charlie. Well,
it wasn't mine, but I was glad to pass it on.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. So, I'm sure that everyone knows, but just for people out there in CW land that are just getting started, because I have had so many people contact me, email me, IM me on Discord and say, thanks for doing this. It's getting my courage up to actually learn CW and whatnot. And they ask me questions and I don't know the answer because I'm a new CW operator too. But one of the questions that maybe we should cover is, what is the difference between a magnet return and a spring return? I'm sure that, obviously you can probably guess a magnet return has different polarities, and that's what pushes the paddles apart. And obviously a spring, there's tension there in the spring. Go back to your physics day of massless springs, and the spring pushes it apart. But is there like any pros or cons to a spring versus a magnetic return, and what should you look for maybe as a first key? Should you get one or the other, or does it matter?
Well, let me also say that there's, in addition to the magnetic and the magnet, there's also like the flex. In other words, like Adam has his key.
Oh, yeah.
There's the flex, and like you can just use a piece of straight metal and it kind of flexes. So there's
torsion,
So there's that in addition to the
okay, yeah. There's a third, yeah.
Non-adjustable, right?
Non-adjustable, yes, but it has its purpose in life, right?
We kind of covered the magnet versus spring. A spring will generally change its properties based on temperature. That's one of the downsides. The other downside is that oftentimes a spring doesn't have a wide range of adjustment, whereas magnets seem to have much more adjustability. Problem with the magnetic tension paddle is they're oftentimes more expensive. I mean, springs are cheap. They're 150, 200-year-old technology or older. It's nothing magic. So the spring tends to be the cheaper version, and you step up to a more expensive version that's magnetic. I personally will never go back to spring. I love the magnetic paddles. I was introduced to them with, I think, the Vibroplex Brass Racer was probably the first magnetic paddle that I used. But now most of the big paddle manufacturers have at least one product that's a magnetic paddle, and I just like the adjustability of it. It's also mechanically sounder if you travel. Once springs popping off, anybody who's used a bencher knows that spring that curls around, it can boing, it can go haywire.
Yeah.
Right when you're ready to work 3Y0J, so to me the magnetic is nicer, but typically it's more expensive. I don't know that I've seen those for less than 150 or $200 nowadays new, and they go up from there. So that's the downside to the magnetic. The torsion is very interesting, very unique feel and type of paddle. The torsion is very nice for someone who is what I call a slapper. And I actually send slapping. I don't rest my thumb or my index finger on the paddles. They are not touching. And I literally slap my hand back and forth. And then once in a while, I'll do the squeeze keying for Iambic. The torsion is very nice for that because it can handle a more severe blow to either side. It's just the way I've sent. Now I find as I've gotten older, I'm a little better, but
and there's the teeny key as an example of a torsion. It's a little different than maybe what we're thinking of right now, but that one, it has these little, I don't even remember what they're called, but it's mechanical, and you just touch them, and there's no spring. They are kind of the spring, the things that you touch. They're springy. I
think it's a beryllium, maybe?
Yes, beryllium. Yeah.
Something.
A hacksaw blade works real well too, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah. So the thing I was going to say about those, though, is I think of all three, those are the most susceptible to temperature changes, and they vary as far as everything when with temperature. I mean, the teeny key definitely performs way different in cold than it does in hot, and it's because of the mechanical the elements and how it affects the metal.
DJ, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, this used to be my vehicle paddle, back when, was before magnetic stuff was more popular. And I don't know, I probably replaced this spring like 4 times because I'd forget about it. It's sitting on my console, my armrest, and I'm just like driving down the street thinking about something else and avoiding traffic. And I take a quick left turn, this thing goes flying. So magnetic for the car now.
Got it. Can we talk? So, anything else about Iambic paddles? We want to talk about cleaning or the care and feeding of a. All right, go ahead, Joe. You got something else?
Just real quick before we go there. There's something that's not on the business end of the paddle. So this is the business end of the paddle. It's where we're sending, right? But I want to talk about this thing on the back, which is a little phono jack, and some paddles have that and some don't. And what you're going to find if you become a proficient CW operator is you're going to want to use that paddle with different radios. And some radios have a 1/4-inch phone jack. Some have an 1/8-inch phone jack. Some use an RCA jack if you're running a 10-tech. And so having some adapters or some cables that can then very easily plug into the back of a paddle is very nice. You may even take a headphone female jack and wire it to your paddle on the underbelly or the underside of the paddle so that you can very easily plug and unplug different cables into the paddle. I know it's depending on where you operate, if you're using the paddle in the car, maybe you've got ICOM in the car, and the DIT and the DA on the wiring are different than when you go into the house and you plug it into your WinKeyer or into your other device. There's not really necessarily always been a standard to that. So just be aware that connection on the back also can play an important role in setting up your paddle and getting on the air.
Yeah. I have a few keys that they're wired in directly, and I hate that because then if that cable, like, N0SA, I love your paddles, dude, but give me a phono jack on the back. Give me a stereo jack on the back. If I ever snap this cable, I would have to literally take this whole thing apart just to get to resolder a new cable. So, yeah, I hear you, Joe.
There's one more interesting thing I wanted to say real quick.
Yeah.
Just kind of a side note. There's also other paddles out there that you can adjust in different ways. And I'll just mention one real quick. So there's just so many varieties. A touch paddle. I built a touch paddle, which is basically based on your, actually it was a pressure paddle, not a touch paddle, which is, they're different. A touch paddle and a pressure paddle are different, but a pressure paddle depends on how much pressure you put on the pads, and how you adjust that is with the amount of voltage that you put into the pressure paddle, and it determines how hard you squeeze and how much how efficient the paddles work for you. So it's really interesting, this discussion.
Yeah.
Does
All right,
anyone have like the touch sensitive paddles? I know 9A5N makes one.
Yeah, that started with Heathkit back. They had a paddle that they produced that was I think it was like the Micromatic, I think they called it. They had these two little metal paddles that you shoved inside of it, and it was capacitive, and it was really cool, except I was a slapper, so that didn't really help me. I mean,
Me too.
You know, but if you are a very light touch and you're like, well, my hand is getting fatigued even by a light touch magnet paddle, those touch paddles could be the way to go.
Yep.
Charlie, I think you on one of your streams had either one of the touch or the capacitive. I can't remember which ones.
It was a
pressure.
paddle.
Pressure. Okay. Yeah. Pressure versus capacitive, right? Those are the two different ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Anything else on Iambic keys? So just to wrap up, just to make sure that I'm on the same page. So up here at the top is my spacing, and then below here, these adjustment screws are for my magnetic tension for the return, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can adjust those and they're, I believe the way that's set up is the magnets are opposing each other, so it creates more opposition and it's harder to.
Yeah, and if you look at this paddle here, it's the same exact.
Yeah.
It's got the spacing here. This is a Bengali sculpture. It's got this the spacing here, and you basically dial that in or out to get your spacing. And then you've got your tension, your magnetic tension here. Now there's one more adjustment on the sculpture, and that is the middle piece here. In the middle there, it actually can be adjusted, and that will, by adjusting that, it will widen or narrow the spacing of the two elements or the two pieces of paddle. Not all paddles have that. A lot of them are just a fixed spacing. This is one of the more Cadillac type paddles, and it can change the width between the two paddles. The other comment I'd make just real quickly, these paddle finger pieces are made of a material unlike most paddles. Most paddles, if I could just use this other one here, this is metallic. That's just a piece of aluminum or metal. Sometimes they'll be made of plastic. Again, a different reflex. Plastic acts differently than metal. It bends differently. These on the Bengali sculpture, these are actually carbon fiber. So they're super strong and super light. I don't know if it makes you send faster, but when I graduated to this paddle and I used it, I think my speed increased by at least 10 words a minute. Like, I'm able to send at 45 words a minute now with a paddle. I could never do that on any other paddle that I ever tried. I don't know if that's because of the carbon fiber, but it does have a different feel. It's a very different feel from metal, from plastic that's more common.
You could take that to space and it would work if it's carbon fiber.
I guess so. It maybe conducts electricity too.
Yeah. Don't get it near any power lines.
Right.
Especially if you got a carbon fiber mast. That thing will eat your antenna for breakfast. All right. So I think we've talked about the business end, the business in the front, the party in the back end of CW keys, and the tension and the action on them, and also talked about the material that paddles are actually are made of. What about the different types of paddles? I went to Hamvention this past February and went over to N3ZN, right?
Yep.
And I fooled around with a single lever paddle and fell in love with it. And I didn't buy it. And I will probably buy a single lever paddle at Hamvention. But man, did I really like that single lever paddle. And I don't know if anybody here has a single lever paddle, but can we talk about the different types of paddles that are out there, and maybe if you guys have examples of one? I get the words Cootie paddle and single lever and Iambic. I mean, I know what an Iambic is, but a bug. I get confused on what those terms actually mean and what they look like and what their properties are. So, TJ, what do you got there in your hand?
So I have a Vibroplex bug in my hand, and it's a skill, right? It's definitely something to get used to, but basically it makes use of the fact that there's a flexible piece of steel that there's a heavy weight on the end of it, that when you press one side of the paddle, it creates dits. So you can do, I, E, I, whatever. But the other side, it's like a straight key where you have to form the da. So you have to kind of like learn a little bit of rhythm and get used to it. But that's what it looks like. This is a Vibroplex bug.
Yeah, so this is my goal. I want to learn how to use those. I don't have one yet. I got to get one, but I would love to learn how to use a bug.
You're not the only person this week who said that.
Yeah. The Vibroplex have been around. If you look, the patent was awarded to Vibroplex in the 1800s, was used by railroad telegraphy. But it sort of had fallen out of favor in the 50s when when Hallicrafters made the first automatic keyer. It was the TO keyer, made in, I think it was from 1954 or 52, something like that. And so that put keying on the map. Iambic came later, and Iambic is simply it's the what they call basically character completion. I hit the dash and it will automatically hit a dot. It'll automatically add a dash at the end. There's different Iambic A, Iambic B. You can read all about that, or we can do another program on that. Probably.
Yeah, we will.
Itself. But the bug is truly an art, and that's really where the collectors come in. There are some very highly prized bugs from the 1800s from different companies that have, McElroy and others. It's an art into itself. It's really a subculture of ham radio, I think, key collecting, or specifically bug collecting. It's kind of like how people talk with accents too. A Southerner has a draw. They've got something called the the Lake Erie swing, where it's a way of sending with a bug that is unique. It's almost like I can tell it's Kyle without seeing you, without hearing you. I hear your fist. And that's very unique. That those type of sending skills. It's quite amazing.
First, real quick, T-Ray, I want to thank you for the super chat. Thank you for supporting the channel. It means a lot. And good to see you at Hamvention or Hamcation this past February. Is the bug? So whenever I hear on the air the very quick dits and the long das, is that a bug?
It is.
Because those dits come very, the 2-to-1 ratio is not preserved whenever someone is sending with a bug, right?
So as anybody in POTA knows, VE3 LDT is a prolific CW chaser. And I traded emails with Dave, and I said, I bet you're a guy who's been using a bug for 45 years, and you're normally running at about 45 words a minute. And I thank you so much for coming down to my rather pedestrian 14 or 15. And he says, do you have a camera in my shack? But his style is very da-da-da-da, and you can hear it. And I almost know him without even having to decode his call sign anymore. Just like Joe said, by the fist. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah. Whenever I'm doing POTA activations, there's some people that I even know their call sign. I'm writing down their call sign before I'm keying in their call sign before they're done sending it, because I already know who it is by their fist. And VE3 LDT is one of them. I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head. That K9IS is another
Yep.
one, and I know those guys. As soon as I hear that K for K9IS, I know who it is because he sends the K in such a rhythm that I know who it is, and I know I can instantly say, "Oh, that's K9IS," before he's even gotten done with the dit at the end of the 9. You know.
Yeah.
So we talked about a bug. What is a Cootie key? Somebody tell me what a Cootie key is.
Isn't that a key that if girls kiss you, you get them?
Precise.
No. Okay.
So Tim, yeah, Tim, is a Cootie key just a single lever paddle?
I don't actually know, but this is the K6ARK version.
It's
Maybe I
pink.
can-
It's you printed it in pink.
Brian and NR7Y printed it for me in pink.
Yeah.
And I haven't actually plugged this in to adjust it properly, but it's a pretty neat key.
I think it is. I think a Cootie key is just a single lever.
It's
Yeah,
a
so
single
for
lever, but
comparison,
it
this
doesn't
is the-
rely on any kind of a sending mechanism. It is mechanical, the same way a straight key or a bug would be. Well, even a bug is semi-automatic. A Cootie is entirely manual. But what you do is when you're sending, you could think of it as instead of pushing down dot, dot, what you do is you're going back and forth, dot, dot, dot. And
So-
you're sending using the horizontal motion of your hand and making either quick hand movements back and forth and occasionally slower hand movements to send the dots and dashes.
So all right. So a Cootie key is different than a
Different than a
this-
single lever.
yeah, because
However, it's mechanically very similar, but a Cootie doesn't rely on that mechanism to create the dots and dashes for you. It requires you to keep the circuit open or closed for the correct amount of spacing.
Yes. Okay, so whenever I was at N3ZN's table, there was the single lever paddle right next to a Cootie key, and I was trying to do single lever paddle motions, iambic motions on the Cootie key, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I am now dumb, right? I don't know
That
why
happened to
I'm
me,
not
too.
doing this. And he goes-
I went up to somebody's and I thought it was a single lever paddle, and it was like, I said, "Hey, I think it's broken." The guy's like, "No, it's not broken. It's a Cootie key." Like,
All right, so now I know. Now we know that a Cootie key is basically almost a straight key on its side, but it goes both up and down, right? Instead of just down.
yeah, it's like two straight keys sandwiched together, and you
Right.
just can. It's optimized for rhythm, I guess, right?
Yep. And you go out to YouTube and you can watch a few videos of guys who are excellent, proficient on the
It's
Cootie.
amazing.
It is amazing.
It's
But
amazing.
again, another subculture of a subculture of a subculture.
Oh, now I've gone down the rabbit hole of Cootie keys on YouTube.
There you go.
Yeah, I
All
gotta
right.
fill out this watch later list real quick here, guys.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I'm always here to encourage people. If you're going to Hamvention, I'll be there, and I'll be hanging by the CW booths and cheerleading for all of you. So
There you go.
Oh, I'm gonna be there at the. I'm buying one this year. I was hanging out there last year and loved it, and so this year I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get the. I think I'm gonna get the dual lever sculpture. Brian got the single lever, and he said he absolutely loves the single lever sculpture, and will never go back to a dual lever. But I don't know. I guess I need to try. I've tried his a little bit, and I can't tell much of a difference. So I like to. I like to squeeze though. So I like the true iambic, and you can't do that with a single. So I think that's why I'm doing the double.
Yeah, that's the
there's a
single
whole
biggest
other
difference
discussion.
between the single and the double is, do you like to squeeze or not? And Kyle, you might mention, you said you tried the single lever and you really liked it. What was it that you really liked about it? Was it a lot of operators find that the single lever is very accurate, 25 to 30 words a minute. It's hard to send faster than that with a single lever. That's where Iambic really speeds up, but the accuracy of a single lever tends to be very high.
Yeah, so I have noticed whenever I am sending, I make a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. I mean, I'm hitting that dit all the time. And I don't know if I have yet to figure out if it's just not me practicing sending and I need to do more practicing. But I notice that whenever, for some odd reason, whenever I was here, I hit my mic again. So whenever I key, there's a lot of times where I'm a very light keyer and I'm pushing the paddles at the same time to get that iambic speed or that iambic the alternating dits and das, and I will not let up on maybe my thumb, the dit, and then I will bring over my index finger and hit the da, and it will alternate back and forth, and I will not send what I want it to send, right? I noticed that if I have either a left push or a right push, I was only sending dits or das. There was no squeezing of both paddles at the same time. Does that make sense? But your point is valid of maybe the single lever paddle that I get might do me justice now, but as my speed comes up, maybe I will graduate from that to now I can't send as fast as I want, and I need to graduate to an iambic paddle.
Maybe. If you are an iambic user, then that would be the case. But if you don't use the squeeze function, I don't know if it'll matter too much. A friend of mine is a high-speed CW operator. He's like 45, 50 words a minute, and he uses a single paddle or a single paddle. I was going to put a video on my YouTube page.
Please do.
Other crappy videos.
Well, this feeds nicely into a question we had much earlier on in the chat. And Arnold, thank you very much for waiting. And he says, can you give a better explanation between iambic A and iambic B?
Oh, that's another show, right?
Yeah, we're gonna. So tell Arnold. Is Arnold still around? Arnold, if you're around, say hello in the chat or something. We're gonna have the whole cast and crew here, plus Adam. I'm hopeful Adam will be included on this chat. Well, we're gonna talk about the difference between A and B, and hopefully show you examples. Hey, Arnold, of what those sound like and how what mode might be best for you, A or B or.
And Adam says he's in, so that's great. Cool. I will learn something. Because I squeezed once by mistake and I went, what happened?
Yeah, if you're not a squeezer, doesn't matter. A or B, you can select either one.
Yeah.
I found that learning,
That's right.
for when someone is learning, a lot of the rigs that are available today, ICOM, whatever, fill in the blank, iambic mode B tends to be the most common. It seems to be the most intuitive. And so I think a lot of folks, when they're learning to use iambic mode B without even realizing that they're using iambic mode B.
Because it comes naturally?
Yeah, it tends to come a little bit more naturally. You can squeeze now and then, you're not squeezing the whole time, and it seems to flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can do some demos next time.
Yeah. I think showing that, showing where your fingers are and showing the squeeze method and what the sound is coming out of the paddle, I think that would probably be good.
Yeah.
Because, we can talk about this all day, but I'm like a visual person, right? I'm like an engineer, and I'm from Missouri. You got to show me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got to see this thing.
The show me state.
Yeah. We're all about, I don't believe it. You got to show me. So,
Hey Kyle, I had a question real quick. You were holding
sure.
your paddle up before, and it had like kind of two wings coming out of the side. Are those for like stability on the bench, or are they jet foils that keep your hand cooled as you're
Parachute jumping.
Yeah, I mean, these things are made for speed. I mean, these things are just, they're like airplane flaps. Whenever you're going too fast, you pull them out so you slow down. No, I think it's called the Traveler, right? And they pull these things out, and you've nailed it on the head. It's for stability. I believe it's for stability
And protection, I think.
Yeah, close them for protection and
okay.
It fits into this lovely case that Big Alley sends along with it.
Wow.
And then it's very hard to use the key like this. So, you unfold it, right?
Right. So I got a terry cloth, and I wrap mine in the terry cloth, and then I put it into the case, and that's how I transport mine. If I can... And this is how I transport mine. All in the terry.
Well, look, how come your lettering's not worn off? Mine's all worn off. I have to get a new case this year when I'm down in Hamvention.
Well, this key here is my key at the house. All of my keys that I take portable are these little N0 SA keys that I have acquired over time. I don't have that, and then the CW Morse key that I think everyone should get one of these starting out. I think that these are great keys. They're 3D printed, but this thing is great. I mean, this is where I learned how to send CW, is on this $35 key from CW Morse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think somebody in the chat said that there's a bunch of Ferraris on this channel and no Yugos, right?
Well, here's a Yugo.
Yeah, I know, and it's okay. I mean, you can there's a bunch of inexpensive keys out there and paddles, and you don't need anything like wildly crazy. I just happen to be a collector, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, you go to a ham fest, you'll find them secondhand all the time. Remember, every ham before 2004 had to learn CW. Got one of those too. Those are great. The Magna-Keer.
So yeah, super. I was using this in the car for a while. Super small.
Great one. So, but remember, every ham had to know CW, and so there were many, many paddles that were sold that were bought only to pass the test, and there the shelf they lie. So, you go to a ham fest, you can find a paddle for 40, 50, 60 bucks that's not 3D printed. It's secondhand, but it's what I call a real paddle. And I don't mean to diss on the 3D printed paddles, but I'm not a fan. I have never found one that had the feel that I felt was good quality for, ramping from the 15 words a minute to get really proficient. But that's just my opinion. Everybody's got their take on this.
Yeah, and I guess it's like purpose, right? If you're doing summits on the air, I mean, I did a couple of activations, and even some of the parkers on the air, I used some of the 3D printed paddles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
TJ, pull up your bencher that you had. That's the one that everyone has got that kind of learned CW. That one that, that one right there.
That's the bencher BY1.
BY1.
And I don't think that I've gone to a ham fest where I didn't see one of those paddles.
I got it for $40 at the TRW Ham Fest in Los Angeles a couple months ago.
There you go.
That's
a great example. Yeah.
$40. And this was like, there's probably more of these sold. I mean,
MFJ made a copy of that one, in fact.
Right.
So
556.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a bit of trivia for you. The BY1 model number is actually modeled after one of the most wanted ham radio contacts back when the paddle was introduced. BY1 was China, and China was not on the air until BY1 PK, and that was that kind of put China ham radio on the map. But before that, BY1 was one of the rare ones, like P5 and 3Y. So just kind of interesting trivia.
Very good. All right, so we're nearing an hour, but I want to go around the horn here. And if you had to take one paddle with you on a deserted island to Ghana, you went to Ghana, and you were working a DXpedition, what paddle would you take and why? Under 60 seconds. Who wants to go first? I'm sure that there's somebody that is dying to Joe. What paddle are you going to take to Ghana?
The Bengali Expedition. Why? It's a magnetic paddle. It's the least expensive magnetic paddle, but the action is very similar to their top of the line sculpture. It's all metallic, or it's all metal, so it can take a licking and keep on ticking. And that's it. I've always liked that paddle. It's one that doesn't move out of adjustment. You adjust it once and it's set. That's it. Yeah, 200. I think it's around $250, something like that, brand new. But you can find them secondhand for a lot less.
Gotcha. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. For me, I would only be doing Soda or Poda. Obviously, that's where I'm not a de-expeditioner, so I would want it something portable. I would say that I would take along with me the Bamatech, or the however you say it, Bamatech TP3. It's the best portable Iambic paddle that I have ever used, and I think it's German made, and it's just really, really good. It's protected from the elements. It's got all the I would grade it the best in everything, really. It's my go-to if I had to choose one. Yep.
German engineering, gotta love it. TJ, what would you take?
I guess for if we're talking portability, I'd probably take I've got a couple of custom keys made by SP8KFQ's, a Polish ham. He was a machinist. Kind of small, portable, but they have a solid brass heavy base, and the thing is flopped around my vehicle so many times and hasn't broken. I'd probably take that. But if I was like on a long-term de-expedition where I had to use like a paddle for a while, I'd probably take this dude, which is a Russian-made RA1 AOM key, and he made this for me a couple of years ago. A couple
This
of his
dude?
stuff.
Does he have a name?
Oh yeah, his name is Val Pavlov.
Oh, I mean your key.
No, it doesn't. He just made it for me.
Wow.
That's cool.
Let's see that key. Like, how many adjustments does that key have?
So there's adjustments for the magnetic return on the outer edges here. And then there's adjustments for the spacing between the contacts on the inner side here.
Okay.
And a lot of that movement happens under this little plate where he, put my call sign. But he makes these. This isn't like, he just made one of these. He makes a lot of similar ones for people. You can Google, he's RA1 AOM, but it's like impossible to get stuff from Russia right now for obvious reasons.
Right.
So it's kind of a challenge. But.
That's cool. Custom made, huh?
Yeah. Very neat. Awesome. Vince, what key would you take? Do you know?
Yeah, speaking from the wealth of experience that I bring to the table here, it's a toss-up between my Bengali Traveler and my joystick keyboard because I want to do something other than just do ham radio while I'm stuck on a deserted island. Seriously, I'll take the Traveler every day. I take it everywhere with me. So one day I will afford a Bamatech, and maybe I will find them at Hamvention. But for now, I'll take the Traveler.
Yeah, very good. Tim, what would you take?
Yeah, full endorsement for the ultra portable K6 ARK paddles here. And I'm going to pull a fast one here. And I want to give a shout out to N6ARA with his tiny key. I don't even know if this will focus, but I'll throw this in my pocket too. Why not?
Very good. Yeah, that's I've got a couple of Adam's keys. I think that he has set me. Does he have like 2 keys, 3 keys, maybe? I don't know. If you go out, yeah, he's got. Yeah. So I've got that one. Okay,
this one's my favorite. But.
Yes. So yeah, I've got that one that he mimicked the Pico Palm, right? And then he also came out with that mini key. Yeah. If you want to go and print Adam's keys, go out to printables.org.
He dropped a link in the chat. I saw that come through.
Yeah.
Do those use a magnet to hold steady on something? Like you
No,
can...
they're flex.
Total
which ones?
flex.
Which ones? Are you talking the one that's like a Pico or the one that's
So
small?
this one does have a magnetic base, and one point with magnets and operating portable in Oregon. A lot of our summits here are volcanoes, big ones and little ones, and they have very ferrous soils. So you don't want to set your magnetic key down on the ground. Or like a lot of my early videos, I was blowing dust out of my key because I was messing up because I set it down and the magnets were just covered.
Wow. You learn something new every day, don't you?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Has
That
anyone
is a
used,
very good point.
That Begali Adventure key they came out with when I was at Hamvention, Bruna. Kind
Yeah,
of
I've used that one. It's a nice one.
Is that the one that connects to the KX3 and
Yes.
Yeah, that is a nice key. I would have to say my key of choice, although it's very heavy, is my Traveler. I really like the Traveler. I did my first CW activation, POTA activation with the Traveler down in Florida, and I was amazed on how my sending was very solid. I was very impressed on how many mistakes I did not make with that key. So that's where it got into my head. Maybe I need to bring the spacing down on my portable keys to something that is more realistic, like my Traveler, for the purposes of not making mistakes. You know,
I need to find somebody who has a Traveler who will let me borrow one for a while, because that I haven't ever even touched one yet, and I've heard people have suggested it to me, and 2 or 3 of you here have said that it's it's one that you really like as well. I need to give it a try.
Yeah.
Does it have a strap or a belt that you can strap onto your leg? Is that the little belt loops on it?
Yeah. It's got loops here. You know, the loops here are probably 3/4 of an inch, long, and I don't think that if you put a belt loop through this 3/4 of an inch tie down and strapped it to your leg, that it would have zero movement. That does not. I can't compute that. Right?
I would stitch it down as a tourniquet.
Right. Yeah, I would think that you would want, an inch to an inch and a half of strap, and then you could cinch this thing down and, fall off the mountain or whatever, off your chair because, the loss of blood. But it would be much more stable. But granted, this thing is a couple of pounds, but I don't know, the leg straps here to me are just decorative at this point. Like they don't serve any purpose. I would not put this on my leg. I just wouldn't.
Yeah, I haven't had much success with leg straps, period. But yeah, I'm still hoping. But to your point, TJ, yeah, I've tried that at Hamvention, but I'd really like to borrow one and take it out into the field on several excursions and try it in that respect, rather than just at a booth.
Well, how about this, Charlie? Why don't I send mine to you the 2 weeks before Hamvention, and then you bring it back to me whenever you fly to Hamvention, and there you can try it out. How about that?
Let's talk about that offline. Maybe that might be an idea. I'd love to, but let's see how it goes. Yeah.
Okay. That's a no. Whenever someone says let's talk about it offline,
it's not a no.
That means no.
It means that I don't want. It means that I might find somebody closer, and it won't be as much of a hassle for you, right?
Gotcha. Okay. I hear you. Clucking big chicken. All right. Is there a point that we have not hit in this segment?
Well, Kyle, one of the things that we didn't talk about is the straight key, and probably for another episode.
Yeah, let's save that for another episode.
A and B and straight key discussions. If you look at a proper straight key, you'll see that. Well, there it is. You'll see there's a lot of different adjustments also on a straight key. And I think a lot of hams, maybe who didn't grow up being learning Morse code in the Cub Scouts or whenever a lot of old timers learned it, they don't really know how to adjust their straight key either. So that could be something. We focus on Iambic because that's really the proficiency, what they suggest with CW ops and some of the other learning mechanisms. But at some point, some folks might want to adjust a straight key, and we could talk about that next time.
Yes. We always run out of time on these things. An hour is never enough. So, Very good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Vince, TJ, Tim, Charlie, Joe. Thank you. Any parting words? Anything coming up in your channel that you want to plug as we dwindle down here?
I'll just say I'm looking forward to the sun drop. That's it for me. I'm out.
Oh, yes. Sun drop. Oh.
Looking forward to seeing everyone at Hamvention.
Yeah, we have like, I don't know, 10 weeks left till Hamvention. Oh my gosh, it's so...
Counting the
Only
days.
10 weeks.
Yes, it's something like that. Because somebody said whenever we got back from Hamcation, they're like, oh, 15 weeks to Hamvention. And I was like, 15 weeks? What? So, yeah. If you don't know what we're doing for Hamvention, man, I need to go to bed. Hamvention, the YouTubers always get together on Saturday night. We're going to rent out a bar again, so everyone is welcome to come out to that. Last year it was called the Troll Pub, and I think that we'll rent that out again. So be looking for that. But I think a lot of us are going to be at 4 Days in May, which is Thursday. I'm going to go to that. I'm not going to go to Contest University this year because I think I've had enough of Contest University. I've been there the last like 10 years, and I'm like, there's only so many RIDI presentations that I can stand. Anyway, so I'm not going to Contest University. I think a lot of us are going to 4 Days in May. Adam is going to present K6ARK at 4 Days in May, so come and support him. And then, Friday night, I don't know what we're going to do, but Saturday night is the big pub get-together. And then Sunday, I think a lot of us are going to go to the Air Force Museum. So I think that's the agenda for the weekend. So anyway,
Friday night's the vendor night, isn't it? For 4 days
that's
in May?
right. Yeah, vendor night for 4 Days in May. Yep, that is
Awesome.
always
You can
that's
get some
always cool
really
too.
good stuff there. I mean, it's just like a well-kept secret.
You want to talk about what 4 Days in May is for those who may not know, Kyle, just real quickly?
Yeah, so 4 Days in May, keep me honest here, boys and girls and people in the chat. 4 Days in May is put on by the QRP Club, and it is presentations about QRP operation and QRP radios and anything low power. Last year, I went to Contest University in the morning and then went to 4 Days in May in the afternoon. And, Adam presented on his Pixie transceiver. Some guys had an SDR and a QRP SDR that they were developing.
Heavy on homebrew.
Yeah, and it's homebrew also. Yeah, Charlie, on Friday night, the vendor night is cool, but they also have this homebrew thing where people bring in all of their radios and all of the things that they have built and show them off. You can just walk around and there's just tables and you can ask questions of vendors and people who have made stuff and makers and homebrewers. And it's awesome. It's the first time that I had gone, and I was blown away on how cool it is. So, and it's not just for QRP. Like, there's a QRP aspect of it, but it's also about learning stuff. And it's also about getting hands-on with those people that are way smarter than you, that you can ask questions, and then they give you real-time feedback. It's really cool. So, yeah. Is that did I hit the mark there? I'm sure that there are some other things that I left out.
And I have put the link in the chat to 4 Days in May for those of you who couldn't find it. And that's a good reminder to me. I got to get my darn ticket.
Yeah.
Just real quick as an example, Hans Summers was there. He's the creator of the QDX and the QDX Mini. He was there giving away or selling the digital version of that, and he also presented. And so you get to meet him, you get the newest gear, and you get to hear him speak. It was just, I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's these inventors and these makers that you see on the internet and you buy their kits, they come to these events and you get to ask them questions in the flesh, It's cool. It's really
Very
neat.
cool.
That's cool.
All right. Anything else? Have we said it all? Everyone has said it all.
CW on.
CW. That is now our new outro. All right. Very good. 73 everyone. CW on.
Yeah.
7-3.
All right.